Beautiful. All right, good evening, everybody. We call the regular meeting of the Town of Wellington Capital Improvement Program Committee to order. It is May 14th, 2025 at 7:02 p.m. Members present are Peter Tanaka, Steph Summers, myself, James Marshall, Amal Tindick, and Jeremy Brothers. In the room online, we have Melissa McKinnon and Jennifer McCoon. So we have a quorum, which is wonderful, and we're called to order. First on the agenda is present to speak. There is nobody in the room, and I see one online. So, Ralph, if you want to have anything to say, have at it. Otherwise, we will move on. Hearing nothing. Moving on. There'll be another chance at the end, Ralph. All right, next up is approval of minutes. April 16th.
The minutes, April 16th.
I'll second that.
Thank you for hitting record on this. Moved by Peter Tanaka, seconded by Steph. Aside from the fact that it's as thoughtful as always, I had no issues with these. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, minutes are approved. Thank you. All right, we're put next on here.
The town meeting
thank
and the budget referendum result.
Yeah, so for those, I don't know who made what meetings and what order, but for the general public as well, just by general update. The budget as you have before you now, or the CIP plan as you have before you now, which we approved, modified and approved on April 16th, was approved at the annual town meeting. 3 weeks ago, ish. I apologize, I don't know the date. And then at referendum, all three budgets fell. So,
No,
oh, sorry.
the
Well, Wellington voted down.
Region 19 passed by 36 votes.
Yeah.
It was
Is it-
like
all three
1,000,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
1,016 to 1,040 or 50 or something
Oh,
like that.
Because
You combine all the votes together so that it
I thought it was
passes.
2 out of 3.
No.
So
You
it failed
combine the
Wellington,
votes.
but it passed the regional.
Yes,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we had 1,000 turnout for our election, and Mansfield had only that issue, Region 19, and they had ratio wise, a big vote to approve it, but there were only 261 voters total in that election.
I think they had
Mansfield.
14 vote no.
Yeah, so.
All right,
I have the numbers on my desk
So,
upstairs and I have a faulty memory, so those are close and don't write them down as gospel.
But we were talking about, at least Pete and I were that, we don't remember it being that close ever.
It's never been
Um,
even remotely close.
So Mansfield may have to get out the vote more.
So that portion of the town budget has passed.
all right. So yeah, with that said, for the other 2 portions, around and around we go again. So while there was no direct vote on CIP, obviously at the budget referendum, we are a portion of the budget. And, I'm not saying a town meeting approval is sacrosanct, but the goal here is really just to discuss what we want to do post referendum, looking ahead at the future second referendum, passing a budget. So
Do you think it'd be okay if we started with asking Pete where he is with this, or what his,
So to my
Orientation is-
understanding, the out years have passed. Cause they passed at town meeting.
the plan, yeah, the plan is.
The plan is already, so the plan is passed. The only question is what happens to year one in the
budget
No,
election?
in the budget.
referendum, Yeah,
referendum redo, whatever you wanna call it, and generally what happens if. Cause we went through this last year too, is, we wait for the Board of Finance, the Board of Finance. Tells the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education. The number they must cut or add. The difference to the budget to make it pass. And then the Board of Selectmen meets and decides where they're gonna make the cuts from. From their budget. And the Board of Ed doesn't even meet, they just. Cause they don't have, we don't, the Board of Finance doesn't have a line item. Decision in Board of Ed. They have a final number decision.
Right, but I think they meet to talk about what they can
They-
contribute to the
Conversation.
conversation or to making the next,
Yes,
the second referendum
right, they can be,
successful with the voters.
right. They can make a suggestion to the Board of Finance. Board of Finance makes the decision on what to cover.
But similarly, I think that's, we, Board of Finance make recommendations on individual line items, correct? And we usually,
Well, we-
Not to the
Well,
Board
we
of
don't,
Selectmen.
there's not appropriations, but
Yeah.
we do give a rationale for what we're cutting and how much, or what we're recommending and how much. Because otherwise it's kind of a, like scattershot. So, so that's been my experience anyway, that we always kind of talk about the reasoning behind
The number of the.
cuts and then the
Yeah.
number.
In the past, the number one reason is to get a budget passed so that we can get the tax bills out on time.
Right,
If
the
we don't
question
get
is
them out
for
on
that.
time, we have to double that.
Yeah.
That cost doubles.
Right, but it's not the main thing. The main
No.
thing is the impact of the budget and where's that spot, when
Yeah.
when are you cutting into the bone of what the town offers and when are you getting a good representation of what the town needs and voters can accept.
Mhm. Well, I've long held that the number we should have is a number that will pass. It passes by one vote, it passes. And I don't think you want it overwhelming in either direction, because that means it's kind of like when you're bartering with somebody and
You cut their hair too short?
well, you're bartering with somebody and you say,
Oh, bartering,
I
thought you said
no,
barbering.
no, bartering, and you say, I can come down to $1,500, and they go, oh, you go, oh, I was too high, I could have gone lower. It's one of those things.
Let me write that down.
You wanna come to a place where the town can operate
Right.
and the voters are willing to pay for it. It's a hard thing to find.
so when this happened last year, Donna has a basic question, I can't recall. Is there a requirement to go back into the CIP committee to revise the approved plan? Or revise the plan to capture,
Did not go back to the CIP committee because the Board of Selectmen
we just edited it, it was just revised.
revised
Right.
it for us. Revised it for the committee.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, I noticed that I was going through the report, I think it just said revised for second referendum. With the date stamped on the report, that's why I was trying to figure out how that process happened, because I couldn't recall, and figure out the chair this week. So.
Yeah.
Don't let
Excellent.
them in Excel.
Huh?
Don't let them in your fancy Excel spreadsheet.
No. Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, we'll have to make.
The employees out of the business office have just been spending hours learning how to improve their expertise in Excel. I have not been attending those classes.
So with that said, I know Board of Finance is meeting tomorrow night. We have well, I guess that's the second question I have related to process, following this annual town meeting for the referendum. Discussion is if, for example, I'm just gonna move on to the next item, because we'll discuss each plan in a little bit. We received last week some supplemental requests from the library. That have apparently become urgent. I don't have all the detail on them. You have documentation on one of them. Before you today, which is essentially their computer systems are unable to support their existing operating systems and are at the point where they can no longer be upgraded to receive Windows 11. So they're looking at, you have a quote before you, somewhere in the neighborhood, depending on how they refine this, of $11,000 to $15,000 for computer replacement at the library. That would be a direct Board of Finance request for the next fiscal year. As soon as that could happen, we have the opportunity to potentially consider this, is that since I'm gonna be revising the plan anyway,
Is
and
it,
they're going
this
to
is,
the second referendum.
this is a pressing need?
The computers will be, they're not supporting Windows 10 anymore.
Yes.
So Windows 11 is, they can't upgrade them, so they'll be out of whatever I have.
Is it about, is it something like 10,000 or what was it?
They're looking at scoping it, the full quote provided with
Down to
15.
10,000.
$395.
Okay,
Thank you, sir. $15,395, but they are potentially considering bringing the cost down to $10,776 by not replacing or downsizing the quantity of computers.
yeah,
So the thought process there is if we're going to second referendum and we're having another town meeting, do we have opportunity to consider capturing this as a low SIP item, rather than a town or request for board fight?
I don't think this qualifies under LoCIP, does it? Computers? I think that's only buildings.
Technology.
Oh, is it?
It said
All right.
technology, I checked the website, it said technology.
Okay,
what do we have in that? In LoSiP?
Yeah. So that's one or two requests, by the way. LoSiP should have adequate funds to carry it.
Yeah, but I thought we had it.
There is.
Factored in somewhere
It's not factored in previously, but we carry everything in this plan as approved is factored into your annual budget sheet, so there's 80,000, 50,000. We just didn't have any additional projects. As of July 1st, we should have 86,000. Free at the end of all of the projects covered by LoSiP, we should have 52,000. So there's 52,000 in there to cover supplemental. Without overdrawing it. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
You were thinking really hard. I'm like, what did I do wrong?
or?
So yeah, there's $52,000 available, and I mean. My preference would obviously be that if this is something we feel is warranted, and they will come before us. If we need to again.
I think if it's gonna be in this year's budget, it's gotta move with all due urgency. Probably before probably next Wednesday, you'd have to do it, because I don't think they're, what?
I
Go
just
ahead.
was gonna ask a question. I apologize for interrupting. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, your question probably will help clarify what I'm gonna say.
That's nice of you to say, probably not. I'm just wondering, we're talking about adding things to CIP when I feel like tomorrow is gonna be a slash and burn of CIP. I don't know what is, I'm not sure how to reconcile those things.
That's because it's coming from LoCIP instead of,
Yeah, it
from,
doesn't hit the town budget if we apply it from LoSiP, meaning it wouldn't have an impact in year one budget either way. It just has an impact in the available funding in LoSiP, which is state provided.
So could that be something that we utilize as we're doing this so that the library doesn't have to access town funds through the Board of Finance?
Yeah, that's
that's
the hope and part of the discussion.
right, exactly, I see where you're going with that, Jim, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
So,
Yeah,
I get
instead
the
of paying
voice.
for it with local tax dollars, we're paying for it with state tax dollars. So it won't affect the tax rate in Wellington, so I think that's the way to go.
if it were to become a request after the budget gets
Then-
approved, then it would be a hit to the general reserve fund.
Uh,
Would it?
I believe the Board of Finance can spend lots of, LoCIP too, I don't think
Okay.
it's,
I think we
it's just the Board of Finance,
Oh,
but
But,
it doesn't have to come through us to go,
Okay.
to be spent, so I think the Board of Finance can do that.
so, but if we wanted to do it without delay, or are you thinking we should wait?
I don't actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure it makes any difference, it's just that it seems like it would be cleaner if it goes, because it's over $10,000. It most. Suitably for CIP, and if we change it in CIP. And then notify the Board of Finance that that's what we would like to have happen, or well, we'd be notifying the Board of Finance. Notifying the Board of Selectmen through the Board of Finance that we'd like to see that happen,
Mhm,
and then it wouldn't affect local tax dollars. I don't see the problem.
okay,
I think it's much better to spend lots of money than to spend local tax dollars,
That's why
particularly in this budget year.
mhm.
this only came about like immediately preceding the budget referendum, otherwise.
Yes.
There's a second request that I believe is related to security cameras, which are kind of
Where?
here at the
Here
library.
at the library?
Don't quote me on that. Steve unfortunately is on vacation this week and I have not been able to connect with him prior to this meeting. So there was another request there, it was somewhere more pressing than they originally anticipated, which is why it wasn't submitted originally.
Okay,
Oh, this is
They didn't
it's a
have
good thing that
conversations for a
I'm
while.
hearing this because I have. A. Security camera system in my office. That's like 2 years old that can be reused. I had to replace the one in the town hall because we didn't have the appropriate storage media for it. To meet state law. So we had to spend like $2,000 to replace that. The body of the old one is sitting in a box in my office. That can be reused and I'm sure it would work for them. They'd have to have cameras in installation, but.
Yeah, I don't have enough detail on that.
Yeah.
He was supposed to send something when we spoke a few weeks back.
All right, well, if you hear from him before I can get my hands on him, please let him know to come see me and we'll see what we can do about that.
I had two questions. One is, do you remember how often we have upgraded the computers there in the, whatever, it's been 17 years? They've been operating?
No,
Have we ever done
I don't think
Replacement?
is following as many town meetings as I have for the last 6 or 7 years, I have never heard anything about. Computers there. Not
They
that
look,
they
they
built the
look pretty
library.
much the same. They look like the
Yeah.
same, but I'm just curious if they are, cause that's old in computer life.
I think
Yeah.
that, yeah, that, I think that is geriatric in computer like. It won't handle
When I
Windows
hear
11.
it can't Windows, when I hear it can't handle the Windows update or is no longer gonna be supported, and I mean, it all.
Yes.
Like-
We're
It's the end,
We're 10
it's
plus
the
probably.
end. Also, my second point is, I think it would be good to be expeditious if we can on that, because they took quite a hit in the first round of budget cuts. I would say more so than most other departments, so. You know, proportionally, yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll follow up with Steve via email, tomorrow and just say, look, this is something. We have the opportunity, but it needs to be
Yeah,
potentially rather quickly. Consolidated to a formal.
Yeah, I really hate to say this, but the library always comes to us. About 2 weeks after the deadline for anything. For how do we begin our project? There's a. 2 weeks after the deadline, they say, how do we begin our project? And they go,
well, I don't think that's gonna be true going forward.
I
with
don't
the
think
new
so
director.
either.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm kind of impressed that he's got this,
Mhm.
timing and date. I mean, in mind.
Yeah, he came on. December, November, something like that, so you're right. it's
Yeah.
November.
If you know the history of Steve, this is not surprising.
Yeah.
He walked into my office and said, I was on the board at Pound. That's nice. I'm thinking he's a 12-year-old, no, he was chair.
Oh, I know,
Yeah, he's an amazing human being. I think this is really
No.
great.
Yeah,
it's going well, so.
Yes.
all right, so I will follow up and see if we can get more detail, if need be, we will figure out. based on how your discussions go tomorrow, what the timing may be. Let's see what we need to do if it's a special meeting to get approval.
Pete,
Modify the plan,
since you have a, you know, a captive audience here that are CIP oriented people, are you able to, tip your hand on your point of view? Or do
My point of
you're gonna
view,
wait till tomorrow?
is that I'm waiting to hear from the Board of Finance. I know that Collin just failed their budget. Stafford just failed theirs for the second time. They're going for a 0%. The 0% spending increase across the board.
Well, I heard they're going for it all from the schools, so they're losing teachers,
I think they've got one,
like 6 or so.
they got
No,
one
just
line
one.
item.
Just one? Oh, did they cut, they edited that out way back?
I'm almost very positive it was just a band here at this point.
Just a band teachers.
That's what I read, yes.
And I heard
You don't like-
Coventry
you don't
just
like
failed
ER?
for the second time too,
No, it's
but
better than
I
six.
always, I thought
It
of
is
Coventry
better.
bad. Coventry town manager isn't, it's hard to get hold. Spent morning doing.
I don't know how they would go to 0 though and they said, because the selectmen, I believe, were saying, tell me if I'm wrong, because I read this in publications that are covering this, but the selectmen said they were not gonna touch the town budgets with this next round. They were only gonna go after the school. They were gonna.
They
do
may have
the
gone
Board
after
of
the-
Ed.
They may have gone after the town budget in the second round.
Oh, I thought that was the second
No,
one.
no,
we were
that
talking
was
about.
the second round that just failed. They're working on their third round.
Oh, okay, so maybe it's the third round that they're doing that. Do you know what they're
No, I haven't
doing in
read
the
it.
third?
I'll call Bill tomorrow. I gotta make some, I've been in local traffic authority school for the last 2 days.
Sounds like a joy.
Instructors drove from Yukon to Cheshire to make me drive to Cheshire for this thing. I could have driven to Mansfield, it would have been a lot closer.
So you think that from the education side, as it pertains to CIP, that we should
No, just the,
hear or discuss is.
so, yeah, I think.
Or anyone been in touch with?
So I think that's this kind of conversation we should have. I mean, we're kind of on the record already, with the plan we have that was approved at town meeting as to what our thoughts are.
In the letter in
And the letter basically
Minutes.
saying that,
approved today?
you know, it's likely already not enough to maintain the infrastructure based on the level of need that we have in here. But I think, given that they're gonna be discussing it tomorrow, if we had thoughts, and I'll be there just to hear the discussion and be able to provide any insight as the Board of Finance deliberates, but what I wanted to do is kind of get your read on it, guys, and see, you know, what is the committee, what thoughts we have as a committee based on the failed referendum vote, and what opportunities there may be in here if we have to lobby one way or the other. So now's the time.
Jen's got some.
Go ahead, Jen.
I don't have any insight. I apologize for that, but we went through line by line in this document, and like literally cut where the only places that we felt were appropriate based on what our charges and kind of looking forward as to what needs to happen for the town. So I am of the mind that we need guidance from the Board of Finance to basically tell us the direction that they're interested in this town going. If they're gonna hack an amount of money out of capital improvement, then I would like to hear them say that. And then I assume we need to reconvene and figure out. I mean, I understand, because this was an exercise we engaged in last night too for Board of Ed. it's frustrating to not have guidance.
And
And
what-
also guidance in ownership. Like we presented this budget, we presented this plan, and if they're going to cut and slash that plan, I would like to hear what their vision is for us to go back and, you know, do something with it.
And lobby for budget failure, yeah, publicly.
I mean,
so.
I'm happy to, well, no, I take that back. I'm not happy to go through it again. We certainly could go through it again, but I'm not sure we are the right eyes for that because we already did that exercise.
So my only comment, Jen, is I prefer to, and my strong preference would be to, even if it's only deferring it, unfortunately, because we kick the can as it is, but I would much rather see reductions in spending in the plan or deferring projects in the plan rather than reducing savings for the larger projects that are forthcoming. I don't know how much opportunity we really have to do that in this plan. There's only a few things that potentially could come to mind. And it's only gonna be, you know, again, we'll wind up paying extra for them next year, or the impact will be greater next year because of it. Because they're not, again, these things are, like, we can push a dump truck out of here, but it's not going away in all likelihood. That replacement will come, we're just delaying it.
Right.
Well, I guess that's my point, Jim. Like, so I think I don't understand it's the Board of Finance. It's not the Board of Finance's job to tell us what to cut and what to keep, but it would be interesting to me to ask the question in the meeting tomorrow. You give us this number, where's your vision to cut from? Is it to cut from the savings that we are keeping for these giant projects that are coming down the road, or are we taking that money from the current projects, trucks, whatever else, in which case those are going to reappear on the CIP plan next year, the year after that, the year after that. I feel like that's a relevant question.
Yeah, cause I think the plan is like carefully, it has careful architecture to it, but it's very backloaded or whatever you wanna say, future loaded. Especially like year two, I mean, it's like, we're just. Things are getting more and more out of reach, so for instance, is our expectation of. How quickly and how much we can accumulate large vehicles for the work we need to do. Do we need to revisit that? Are we kind of thinking, too, equipment wise, are we thinking, too aggressively? Because for the last several years, we've talked about the leasing, the whole trend to leasing from purchasing has been that we're pretty wrapped up in leasing costs in our operating budget now. I mean, it's definitely high impact. I think the increase in this budget year was, or in the last couple, it's gone from 85 to up about another to like 130. So it's like. That's at a clip, and I know that depends on where the vehicle purchases lie, but when you look at this plan. There's a lot of them coming up because we kept a lot of them alive for a while, especially in the fire departments, I think. So that's what I'm worried about is kind of like, where's the manna from heaven gonna come on this?
Dan, I believe that part of the Board of Finance's charge under the law is to give us direction. So I will try to point that out to them tomorrow night.
I appreciate that.
If I can find the piece of paper that says that again. The paper on my desk is starting to pile up.
Well, this representative on CIP from Board of Finance will say this. That of the 7.4% increase in the first, in the first budget. Half of that is revenue shortfall, it's not spending. So if you're looking at taking it down to zero, we're making up for, we're not just flatlining spending. We're going in deeper to make up
Yeah, I
for,
think,
could I just say,
Oh,
for the market practicalities, the explosion in real estate costs that we all knew was coming, because I don't know about you guys, but haven't you had people, realtors, ask you if you wanna list your house, and friends that have gotten over their asking price? I mean, we saw what happened during COVID, it's not a surprise. I understand that human nature is not necessarily to try to plan ahead for that, or to be able to do that in in the one's existing budget that was in a house that was valued at a much lower rate, but it's still, the trajectory is always up. And the pandemic had us take a sort of supercharged, video game leap in real estate prices, so that's a reality. Plus, the state made several judgments, several votes this year, that make some sense in long-term policy, but hit us at that worst possible time. And then, of course, the Love's building permits and the activity on that build falling off now, and they, of course, they're taxpayers, but there's no sort of larger revenue aside from the taxes they pay that's coming in. And then the motor vehicle refiguring of how to value cars that took 9 million out of the grand list. And the 100% relief for fully disabled vets from house tax and property tax, which all of us can agree with is a good idea. It's just that it's all hitting in the same year. And it is an impact. It's 9 houses off the grand list. And our new builds are only 7, and of course, they're not taxable yet anyway. But go ahead. Sorry.
I like to be real with you guys. I feel like that is all true, Steph, all true. Like, and we can have that conversation in this group. My fear is that we have to figure out how to present the reality, or have you present the reality in a way that is digestible for the group tomorrow. Because my fear is that it's just going to be cut.
Yeah, well, that's why, I mean, I know, it's sorry, people like, well, I don't wanna hear that,
Yes,
but
yes.
it's like, this is if you're talking about a simple mathematical formula of putting a budget together, which it kind of gets down to in the end. This is a big, new quotient, a new figure in there that's disrupting the usual process. So I'm reacting because that is an elephant in the room. It's an element that we can't ignore. So how do we address that? I mean, I would actually love to ask the opinions of this group, even though it's not on the agenda and it may not be appropriate, about how people feel about short-term tax relief kind of options, which isn't about the CIP plan. But it is about, what do we do? How do we address the whole thing in this town?
A point of
So-
order, Mr. Chairman. I think you've got somebody in the waiting room.
Oh, thank you, sir. Multitasking, not doing it well.
Who we got?
iPhone.
iPhone.
Hi,
Apologies
iPhone.
for the delay, iPhone. Thank you, Ralph.
Pete wanted to say something.
Go for it. Pete,
Yeah,
and then I'll-
getting back to about halfway through your first. I think that 3.5 or 3.75% on the revenue drop, I think that is something that is problematic, because I think that the lowest, I don't think we can cut below last year's levels. I 0 was hard, 0 was brutal.
Yeah, it's.
Negative is worse. I'm not sure it's doable, but particularly for the Board of Ed. You know, I was talking to Phil and he thought their budget was about as low as they could go, and if they slash it, then it's gonna be hard. If you slash it below what they were budgeted this year. But that 3.5%, I think that whatever that revenue, decrease, the revenue add-on. What is it, 3.5, something like that?
Yeah.
It's in that vicinity. I think that's as low as we can go on a,
Mhm.
and I've been saying for months that you know, my feeling on the matter is, based on history, is about 3.5 is about where the town passes a budget. So that's where I'm coming up
No,
with,
but 3.5 is a zero.
3.5 is zero, yes.
I don't
But
think
3.5
that's
is
doable.
zero on spending, and I don't know if that's doable either. But it doesn't matter what's doable or not doable, or ugly or not ugly, if we don't have a budget, we're.
So,
No, I think
We're
we
in
can
a
make it
problem.
in, I think we can make, and and I said to Jim, we probably shouldn't have the discussion that's gonna happen at Board of Finance tomorrow night. But
Right.
it's real hard to talk about the future of CIP without,
yeah, so, I mean, my only comment here really is that. The referendum wasn't a direct referendum on CIP, right? It was, in my mind, it was a reaction to. A dramatic percent increase in spending. And based on what we have here, CIP is not dramatically, a dramatic driver of that increase. I'm like 70 some odd $1,000, if I remember correctly, right, at least related to capital reserve fund.
And the problem in my budget
Is-
the rest of the budget is that a lot of it is driven by the contractual obligations that the town has.
like the
It's
payroll correction. You did and
Payroll
stuff,
correction,
yeah.
I mean, we could pay people below minimum wage, but I think there may be repercussions.
We're behind the ball on all of that as well from an operating budget.
Yes.
standpoint. But in my mind, this is more a reaction to increases in spending rather than. You know,
I think it's an increase in
Right.
that top line.
I don't think we'd be having a big issue with the budget if it weren't for all those other elements. I really don't.
Well, the net revenue decreases is, I think, what,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
If we didn't have all that stuff together,
right,
plus the
and
reval.
I failed to take that into account when I started, I didn't even think about that till right at the very end. Probably that last Board of Finance meeting was the first time it went, wait a minute. I just assume revenues are flat every year and I was wrong.
No, they've been a help.
It was a decrease, right?
Yeah, it was a decrease. Usually it's a small increase. Some years it's a big increase.
yeah, so. For the items that hit the capital budget, I mean, we have an increase in capital outlay for 3 small projects. From last year. Slight increase in public works lease payments. And then. The capital reserve transfer to. Accommodate what we anticipate for spending in year 2.
That's the line 3, correct? That you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the big jump.
Yeah,
In spending, but that's because we have big projects coming.
yes.
And the decrease, almost the equivalent decrease from last year in. The transfer to school project. So it leveled down most of it, but there's only a couple of $100,000 worth of increased spending. You know, total in the project. I think we can probably get CIP as much as it's going in the wrong direction to. Closer to 0 out for an increase over last year without. Dramatically devastating impacts.
What's the dollar amount on that? Do we know? To go to $0 increase over last year?
Give me a second. There is a 200, let me use a calculator. 200 and something thousand feet. 223, 22,000 change.
22, 200.
Let me give you the exact.
No, that's good enough. That, seriously, Jim, that's good enough because,
Think of it as 200.
yeah,
But is that where the town, what the town needs to do, flatline its plan for the future?
well,
Is that
I
what?
think we're flatlining everything.
Yeah, but,
Okay.
well, yes and
See,
no,
because
yes and
when
no.
I'm looking at the picture,
I think-
and I know what this committee looks at.
Yeah.
This committee focuses on 20% of the
Right.
general government budget. And I'm looking at 100% of the general government budget, trying to figure out where can I cut to save
I know what
parts
you're
of
saying,
CIP, where can I cut from CIP to save
yeah,
the,
I know what you're
the,
saying,
you know, assistant Parks and Rec person. You know,
Wait.
I gotta make those decisions.
We're also having this conversation in kind of a vacuum because, we've begged for town input as to what the priorities are. And it's the same, almost literally the same group of people in each committee talking about the same thing all the time.
yeah. That's true,
Just for the record, that number was $222,561.
Yes, that's correct.
So we can, I think there are savings in here. So the other problem I have, just to note, and it's something, if the opportunity affords itself, is we did quite a bit of work to close out $200,000 worth of standing old projects. We're not gonna have that luxury again next
Right.
year.
Right.
It was a boon to not dramatically not causing us to have an even higher spending need this year, because we're able to free up a few $100,000 in savings this year through vetting old projects, closing out projects with, lingering funding for no reason, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all, again, and it's the same argument, we're having the same conversation again that we've had all season long, so, I don't think we necessarily need to belabor it too much more here. I
yeah,
really wanted to get a sense of where you guys were at heading into that meeting tomorrow, so questions you're asked, I understand what I'm lobbying for.
Steal a line from one of my podcasts I listen to. Well, wait, it's worse than that. We've already increased the budget overall $28,000 we reached in 19. So if we flatlined, we'd have to find that $28,000 someplace else to.
Yeah.
So we'd be below.
Yeah, and I mean, leveling out CIP this year, again, it was a reduction last year, so we're.
No.
Can I ask-
Hey,
No, okay, I'm not, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Where are we getting the conversation about flatlining it? Just because that's the vibe around, or?
I don't think that's realistically being discussed, I think it's a kind of what if, because, Pete is talking about, conversations he's had about trying to do a zero. I don't know, Pete, what's your context for asking
My
that question
context
about?
for the zero is that. If we zero spending, we're still at a 3.5% tax increase to make up for revenue. So every dollar over zero puts us over 3.5%. How far can we go over 3.5 and still pass this? That's the question I have. And my basis for even thinking about zero is because that's where Stafford went to try to get their third referendum passed. And Colin just failed the first time, and I don't know where they're going because I haven't been able to get hold of Jim yet. And Coventry, I think, failed for the second time, and I haven't been able to get hold of them yet either, because I've been in school for the last 2 days. A school that I would dearly have loved to send somebody else to.
So,
All the big towns sent their police departments.
Mm,
so yeah, I think a lot, no, go ahead, Melissa.
We need to hear from the public, I mean, and not through Facebook. Cause that seems like, that's where everybody's comments are, that they don't want the taxes to increase, and, I mean, where are the people? Where is everybody? I feel like it's like the same type same people at every meeting and nobody says anything to help us.
Communication would help, but.
Based on the email that I got from Bruce. What's today, Monday? I think that's why he is not moving with the haste in which I was hoping that we could do this. Is so that he can hear from the public on this Thursday. That's part of what I think he wants to do.
Well, we can hear and act too, right?
Yeah.
Because. What I would like to hear more of is what people, think is, what people would. What areas of town spending do they feel is either over budgeted or that they would recommend doing without or whatever? Because, I mean, I think that's kind of opening a can of worms and there's gonna be, 5,500 opinions or whatever, one for everyone. But, you don't hear that. You just hear, I don't want my taxes to rise at a time where we've got a reval that's raising residential values overall 47% on average. That's not just zero-based budgeting, that's well below water.
Yeah, and until we get communication, regular communication, beyond just meetings, but,
Somebody, iPhone wants to say something.
iPhone, who are you?
Hello?
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 Yes,
Yes.
who are you?
Oh.
'Cause you're-
I'm sorry, this is Peter Latinchich on his cell phone. It must not identify me.
It does, it
doesn't-
identifies you
You're
as
just
iPhone.
iPhone.
Oh, how exciting. Well, Peter Latinchich, 97 Trask Road, and you seem to want to hear from the public, so I thought I might opine if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Can I hold the present to speak?
I certainly can.
Through this, we shouldn't be too much longer. I appreciate it, thank
James, thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Melissa. That's a larger problem with, I think, all the town boards and committees we have and getting appropriate word out, or even just explanatory notices beyond a Willington Wire quarterly. If even that, so.
I want to ask you and, well, anyone who wants to comment on it in the committee meeting, but. That you and Jeremy, especially based on your experience. Are our numbers kind of what people first come to the table with and say, we think it's gonna be 50,000 to do this? Or are they tighter than that, do you think? Are they underrepresented? I mean, this is something I worry about all the time with CIP, because you really don't know till you get closer to the actual doing of the project. But for the veracity of the plan you're working on, how do you guys think we rate on that?
Oh, I mean.
Any views?
It
Because
depends on the project.
It does.
But most of the problem we have, for example, the parking lot replacement, the few things we do have in year one. The parking lot
It's higher.
replacement for the hill is higher because it was under budgeted the first time.
yeah,
Right.
Same thing with the roof replacement at. Which I don't think is which is a year 3 ad, but they're at, some additional requests for 70 some odd thousand, I forget what the number is, but
yeah,
because the projects get delayed and then they cost more.
Mhm.
And that is the
That's
chronic problem we have with not having a capital reserve fund of the true sense to pay for,
Right, then you start hitting road projects and that's a whole different, it's a whole different animal compared to.
because
building
again,
projects.
it's volatile in terms of the way costs change and.
the reality is that there aren't many projects in there. There's
Yes,
just not,
there aren't many.
there's really no actual projects. We don't do that, so that's the trend, is we're pushing things off, and the problem is.
I was just looking at the spreadsheet on my computer, like what are we gonna take out? Like there's, I don't know.
We've done a good job of pushing everything to Fund 17, low SIP, finding alternative sources that don't hit the budget. There just aren't very many projects because we don't do projects. I wish we did more of them. I wish we planned so that we could entertain more, which is the whole goal. You know, to increase savings, increase spending so that we start to get ahead of these things. And we don't have big jumps like year 2 and year 3 in the plan. So, but this is the situation we're in yet again for another year, and we'll have to see where it lands.
So may I ask a logistical question? What is our goal for tonight? Like to see if we can find stuff to pick out or strategize or
Just that my goal with this agenda item was really just to get your thoughts and feedback on what the discussion from CIP's perspective may want to be tomorrow, so I understand where you guys are at. Heading into their discussion and any questions or potential reductions they may have, so. I think it's really understanding where they're at, what they're looking to target, and then trying to accommodate as best we can. Minimizing, making suggestions to minimize the impact to future bigger hits. So that's where we're at, unfortunately. I think it's the best we're gonna do for our meeting tonight. And then we'll see where we go. We'll see how it falls out tomorrow, and if we have to have a special meeting to either revise a plan or which we may or may not need to do. Or to capture the library request through LoSiP, we'll do that and figure it out from there.
I got a name tag.
Oh, there you go, fancy. So with that said. Any other thoughts before I move on to just presenting the really rough draft or rough markup of our annual report?
No, go.
Alright, so moving on, what you guys have is a very loosely annotated. Mostly entirely needing to be updated to reflect whatever the approved budget plan is. I made notes in the margins essentially, which you have before you, just suggestions for what we might want to update. I don't know how familiar you guys are, or if you've even, you know, I know we have some new members that may not have looked deeply at these in prior years. So I wanted to get this out. This is last year's plan annotated. It's really not gonna be worth too much time until we understand where the budget is and the approved spending levels are. But if you have comments between now and whenever our next meeting is, please send them along individually. And we can look as to how best to update things. I think it's important that that the report should reflect where we feel.
Wait a minute, what page are we on?
Yeah, I think mine's gonna be 2 parts.
It was all one stack at the last.
There's one, yeah, you might have had the library stuff up in the front.
There you go, there.
Okay, I got library stuff that I'm.
Yeah, you know.
Oh, here we go, never mind, found it.
If you guys have comments or things, I have no problem continuing to work on this draft once we understand what's.
I move that Jim work more on this draft.
I
Well,
only wanted,
That you allow me to have time to buy a magnifying glass. so
I
can read
think-
it.
I think that we all need to have a part in this, this draft, and I'm happy to look through it and see if there's stuff that, you know, from my perspective, we can add or edit or whatever. And I would hope everybody would want to do that.
yep, that is the reason I got even this raw level out to you guys today, just so you
And
could.
thank you for doing that,
Yeah.
because if you get into the Board of Finance in a reasonable amount of time, you'll probably still be the first.
So yeah, once we get the data, I can incorporate it, but there's language if we want to, I do think it's important that this report should reflect where the committee feels we are at and addressing the long-term spending levels necessary, whether or not one ultimately gets captured, does or doesn't do it. You know, incorporating some of the language from the letter, I have notes on the margins. You guys, let me know your thoughts. If you disagree with them, we can discuss them at length when I have a better sense of what the draft is and what numbers are actually included in it, and we'll take it from there, but.
I'll be real honest, I'm not gonna focus on this till we're closer to having a budget. It's kind of job 1 right now.
Neither am I, but I wanted to get it out to you guys so you could at least be thinking about it
Appreciate
once we
that.
get past the budget.
You're such a scout.
So that's it. We're not gonna go line by line or really revise it today, but you have a copy. And we'll take it from there. Any other comments? Nope. All right,
Any comment is present to speak.
presence to speak. Peter. The appendix.
Good evening.
You get to go first. Thank you for being patient.
Thank you. Peter Latinchich, 97 Trask Road. Good to see you all, and I appreciate all of your efforts. I wanted to respond to Jen's comment that it'd be good to hear from someone from the public. I consider myself a resident that will express his opinion. And I spoke to many folks prior to the referendum. I was part of that 1/3 turnout of the town that voted substantially against this budget. And I think, like most residents, we view it differently than those of you who are assembling the budget and compartmentalizing everything. I think, like a lot of people, what I reacted to was a large increase in my property taxes as a result of the reval. In my case, $1,100 roughly. Then I said, okay, on top of that, there are spending increases. Now, I was aware of some of the things that many people probably were not, things like Stephanie mentioning with the revenue going down and other variables. But at the end of the day, the combination of the reval increase and then added to that spending increases just proved to be too large a burden for myself and many people that I spoke with. And I think part of that is this capital plan. There was, with all due respect, Jim, significant opposition to it at the town meeting before we went to referendum. In fact, the vote was somewhat oddly counted multiple times, but that was the first time in my recollection that the CIP plan was ever opposed at a town meeting. And whereas I don't think people have the understanding of your plan that the people who are directly involved in it do, I think there is a sense that the scale, scope, and overlap with other projects is more than what the town can sustain. And I think that drove the referendum as much as the reval did. And I would encourage the CIP committee to look carefully at these projects and the size of them, because they're not characteristic of what our town has done in the past. When we built the library, it was a single project that we saved our pennies for and was very successful. But now we're looking at multiple projects overlapping each other, creating an even larger tax burden than the money that you're setting aside to prepare for those large projects. And again, when I spoke to many people prior to the referendum in town, they were very surprised to learn that. Most people don't realize that that's happening because they're not observers of the CIP process. They should be. I agree with you folks. But when I explained to them that that was occurring, most people I spoke with were very surprised to learn that we hadn't executed any projects such as the school roofs or the HVAC or other things that were discussed after the school referendum on the construction of a new school. So I think the totality of this just proved overwhelming. And I would strongly urge you to consider looking at the plan and scaling something to what the town feels it can manage. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Peter. Ralph.
Well, good evening, everyone. Ralph Tillis, 47 Village Hill Road. I don't envy the task in front of you guys. I don't envy the task in front of the Board of Finance. Obviously, there's some challenges here. If we zeroed out the increase in the two budgets that are going to control, we'd have a increase in taxation of about 2.7%. If we go with it as is, that number's 7.4%. That's a heck of a jump. Now, that, of course, it also factors in the fact that we lost something like 57,000 in revenue. Just general revenues.
Just on interest.
Brandless effects were even worse. When you look at motor vehicles going down, the grand list for motor vehicles going down 14.6%. Personal property only gained 5.5%. That's both of those together total about $90 million in grand list. There's 1,912 residences in town. Total taxation potential revenue from that at the current projected mill rate is 12 million. Real estate other than residential, our taxation revenue could be about 3.3 million. So that gets us to cover the 7.4% increase. But when you look at who's bearing the brunt of that, in all honesty, FedEx is making out like a bandit. Their increase in taxation is something on the order of $4,000 per year. That's substantially equal to or less than the greater proportion of residences in town, what they're going to see for an increase. And this is why I was opposed to this budget. Not that we shouldn't spend money, because we have to. Inflation is going to hit us, but we can't dump all of this on every home in this town to pay for it all in 1 year. That 1 year jump is phenomenal for many people. $3,600, $8,000 per year increase in 1 year. If we go with this budget as is, that's, and it's not going to go down from there. The tax due is not going to decrease over time, unless we expand our grand list, but that's a whole nother story. I won't go there. Which is my motivation for pursuing this graduated implementation of the increase in revaluation. You spread that over 4 years. The first year burden is a little tough, but subsequent years are a little easier to adjust to. They're gradual increases. We didn't get here. We got here in 6 years. So yes, Stephanie's right. A lot of folks should have been aware of this. But the reality, I think, surprised a lot of people who were aware that housing prices were going up and property values were going up. But the magnitude, I think, was a surprise. And most disappointing was the reduction in motor vehicles and the minimal increase in commercial properties. If you own raw land and it's not under PA 490, hold on to your wallet, because it's going to be a very expensive tax bill. Anyway, where do you go? I don't know. It's going to be up to the people who have to pay the bills. And somehow this has got to come down. Just so that your collection rate doesn't start falling, because the last thing we want is to start owning homes in Wellington. We don't want the town owning them. We want them owned by private parties. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions y'all might have for me. And I don't appreciate, and I'm not sure what the pot shots were about Excel earlier. I wasn't paying that much attention, but I hope it's not it. Guys like me who have a good grasp of what Excel can do for you when it comes to financial analysis and doing a lot of what ifs with numbers. I'm an engineer. I play with numbers all the time. And
Ralph,
It
Ralph,
wasn't anything personal.
it was a pot shot that I took at myself for my inability to use it. So
Okay.
you can relax on that.
well,
Don't be sensitive about that. We'll be much more straightforward.
the last time I tried to present something with a spreadsheet, it got poo-pooed in all quarters. So that's why I kind of
I like Excel. I'm just not an expert at it, and I'm a self-admitted not expert.
well, I'm not an expert, but I have a good grasp of it. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of alternative things that we could do to kind of mitigate the impact on the taxpayers. That's all I'd like to see. Yes, we are going to have to spend some money. I get that. We have schools, we have firehouses that need funding. But we also have to rely on where the bulk of our revenue comes from. And that's from private residential properties. It is the biggest chunk of the revenue that you get to cover your budget. So
To that, Ralph, I have to say, what was the bank robber who said, why do I rob banks? Because that's where the money's at. In this town, that's where we don't have a lot of commercial property, so homeowners are where the money is at, so.
I get that, Pete. I do.
Yeah.
But what did you gain with commercial properties? We gained very little, something like 2.3% in the grand list growth. A grand list increase in value for commercial. That's not what happened in residential.
No, not. I admit that, but I give you that fully.
Well, I don't wanna curtail you, Ralph, but we're wandering, I think, well beyond any, well beyond, CIP territory and more larger budgetary discussions that are probably.
Sorry, I got on a roll. What can I say?
No, it's okay.
No, I appreciate the input and the insight, Ralph.
We could tune into this podcast.
I also think we're likely gonna hear all those same hear much of that same discussion from many parties tomorrow and in the weeks to come. Let Board of Finance see where their work goes.
And just on that point, I don't think some of those remedies are even in play for 25, 26. I'm not sure, but I've done a little bit of checking around on that. I think a lot of the dates where the process for, getting that kind of thing underway, I think is probably gonna go into the next fiscal year. It's kind of you kind of have to do it ahead, I think, but I could, there could be other things.
I disagree.
Really?
I don't agree. It all depends which comes first.
All right, you guys can sidebar that one then.
Okay, yeah,
All right.
it's not true for the vehicles, I know that. Yeah,
Thank you, Ralph. I appreciate it. I don't mean to cut you off, but
No, I understand. That's fine.
Pete's falling asleep this morning.
Yeah, I've had a really long day, and I apologize for not being.
well, I'm gonna move
100%
to
up.
adjourn then.
And I will second that.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated. All right.